say on TV when I was your age. You know, Jon Stewart can say butt face, for example. You can well,
you can say shit, but not turd.
I'm sorry?
You can say shit, but not turd.
For example, yeah. Yeah. So people say, and of course, you can operationalize this in a number of different ways, that there's an increasing coarseness of American culture. I mean, 50 years ago, people in this room could not sit like that, for example, and would not be wearing baseball caps. So people are complaining that there's an increasing coarseness of American culture. Coarseness tends to be equated with sexual expression. Not always, but typically. And so some people are saying that that's a terrible thing, and that we need to roll that back by not allowing lots of different things that are currently allowed. So since we're at a university, I just want to note an example of the war on sex inside of the university. Here's the University of Nebraska. I spoke there a year and a half ago. That's how I know about this. They had a very successful peer sex education program, and they decided that they didn't need to be spending money to help the students talk to each other about sexual decision-making, sexual behavior, sexual questions, sexually transmitted disease. The peer program had been extraordinarily popular and highly used. The university also eliminated the funding for free and anonymous STD testing, particularly HIV testing. And the school said, we'll get around to refunding these things sometime. I think that was the expression, sometime. It still hasn't happened yet, don't hold your breath. Now, the state went even further than that. They went beyond the university. What they did was they changed the Medicaid application to delete the question about family planning. In the brochure about health, they took out references to erection problems, which are one of the most effective early markers for diabetes. This isn't a sex thing, this is a medical health thing. But because it involved penises, they needed to strip that out. And they changed their annual sexual health update conference to a sexual health conference. There's a lot of people in America who are willing to talk about sex if it has to do with disease, but not if it has to do with pleasure or health or expression. Oh, and then of course what happened was that gonorrhea rates skyrocketed in the biggest city in Nebraska, kind of interesting. And so what did the state of Nebraska do in response to the problem of young people not having enough information? It doubled its funding for programs that meticulously prevents young people from getting information. A wonderful bureaucratic response to a bureaucratic mistake. And all over the country, there are college campuses that are struggling with the issue of over-regulation of sexuality in various ways. For example, many of the health clinics on college campuses now, they're not dispensing birth control pills anymore. A lot of labs on college campuses are refusing to do HIV testing. A lot of strip clubs and adult bookstores in the neighborhoods surrounding universities are getting attacked by local police. And sex research, what little sex research there has been, is getting defunded. And now there's a new game in town, which is that when a faculty member at a university gets a grant to study anything sex-related, whether it has to do with courtship behavior, whether it has to do with sexual communication, whether it has to do with self-identified sexual orientation, somebody in the community who doesn't like this tells their local congressperson. Their local congressperson starts talking about why are we funding crap like this, and before you know it, somebody's talking about pulling the research money. The University of Minnesota published an extraordinary book by Judith Levine a few years ago called Not Harmful to Minors, which meticulously documented how not every child who is involved in a sexual relationship with an adult suffers lifelong agony. Many do, and apparently maybe don't. Now, as a clinician, I've been a psychologist for 30 years. This is old news to us. We know this. However, this was the first book to really document it. It was peer-reviewed and published by the University of Minnesota Press. And some people got so upset, they claimed that this book was, of course, encouraging pedophilia, pedophilia being slightly worse than communism and terrorism now. So people claim that this book encouraged pedophilia, and the book was denounced on the floor of the U.S. Congress. I know the author. I mean, I wouldn't want to go through what she went through, but boy, that book sold a lot of copies after that. I keep wishing that the Catholic Church would denounce my book, because I really could use the publicity, and my publisher can't afford it. So, and what we're seeing on a lot of college campuses, pharmacists in the community are not willing to dispense the morning after pill, which now, if you're over 18, you ought to be able to get over the counter. Some pharmacies magically not carrying. So there's a lot of ways in which the war on sex has come specifically to college campuses. And high school campuses, where of course they're still involved in abstinence training. I don't say abstinence education because there ain't no education in abstinence education. It's training. And it's training in how sex will kill you. The federally mandated, you ought to know this, the federally mandated definition of abstinence education is, it's a curriculum that must teach that the inevitable outcome of premarital sex is psychological and physical disease, psychological and physical attacks on the well-being of the participants. So that's abstinence training. When Obama and Hillary were duking it out for the presidential nomination,